Hello everybody. I know it's been a while since we put up a video on YouTube. We've been busy, but we have a customer engine that we're going to film today. It gives us a good excuse to put something new up on YouTube. This is a customer from Kansas, United States, and his name is Misha Birchfield. I believe that's how I pronounce his name. Anyways, he's going to get a relatively upgraded motor, about as far as we can go with the RX8 engines, with the exception of doing the full depth 2mm apex seals and corners. We are going to be using our treated drop-in RX8 type seals with a street port and polish and some oil modifications. That is about it. Some brand new 09 to 11 rotor housings, which are the housings that we use all the time when we do RX8 builds. A little bit of modification required to get them to drop into an 04 to 08, but that work has already been done. So we're going to just show you real quick some of the pieces, sub-assemblies before we assemble the engine, and some of the work we've done, and then we'll get right on to assembly. So we have our rotor table with all the new pieces ready to install in the rotors. Unfortunately, we do not have time permitted to show the assembly, packing these rotors with all the seals. Those are our treated 2mm drop-in seals, and of course you can see everything else here. Corner seals, side seals and springs, and oil seals and blow-by scrapers and springs are all new. Rotors cleaned up, ready for seals and bearings. And then as we go over here, this is where we have all the engine pieces, and pretty much what we've done is typical. This is a brand new center plate, so we didn't lap this obviously because it's new, but we have done our street port on the intake and on the exhaust. I don't know if you can zoom in a little bit and see that a little better. And on these engines you got to be real careful on the exhaust port. The biggest and most problematic area for first-timers. You can easily cut through to the water jacket if you don't know what you're doing on these ports. So these exhaust ports have been ported to the specifications we know the engine will tolerate without going into dangerous zones. And our intake port is a standard intake port that we use. Of course, we take material out of the runners, as we always do, and polish these up, make them equal. And moving on to the end housings, same thing, exact same exhaust port on the port itself as compared to the center. The intake ports have been modified on the 5th and 6th upper ports only. These ports here, we do not mess with the port shape or the port timing, the lower ports. We only modify the secondary ports. And what's real important on doing a port job on an RX8 engine is you see how the top of the port does not come straight across anymore, it comes on this angle. It's extremely important when you're up this high in the rotation of the rotor that the port and the side seal close off like a pair of scissors, so you don't clip the side seal on the intake port. So that is a critical portion of porting these engines reliably and properly. And same thing. You'll see we've modified and polished the runner for the lower port and improved the flow a little bit down here. Outside of that, we have our oil modifications where we've ported out the oil pump area. We've enlarged the gallery to feed the stationary gear, and we have also enlarged the galleries to the oil pedestal down to the gear and down to the regulator. And last, if you just zone in on these stationary gears, you'll see we've opened up the galleries feeding both of these stationary gears. Okay, so that's pretty much all we have for upgrades on this engine. And when we see you next, we're going to be on the engine stand ready to put it together. Okay, today is July 19th, 2017. We are now going to assemble the RX8 engine for Micah Birchfield. This is his work order, and there's his name, Micah Birchfield. And what we've done is mounted this ported and lapped front iron to our stand. We're going to zoom in real quick, just because for the sake of the customer who's paying for the video. We like to show that this is his engine that's being assembled, so Micah's first name is actually written on all his engine parts, every housing, every rotor, and you can see it here. And then if we can, we'll just try and zoom in on the rotor, and I'll show you Micah's name on the rotors, okay? Right below my thumb there. And the other one's right behind it right here. Okay, so front rotor is down. Just going to take a little bit of lubrication and re-lubricate the rotor bearing, which we actually already did, but we're just going to put a little bit more. And now we're going to pop the crankshaft in. Like so. So one of the things that we forgot to mention during the intro was the fact that this is a ported engine with a brand new center, 09 up center, brand new 09 up rotor housings, and lapped front and rear. And the oil modifications not only include the work on the galleries, but we're also putting in a high pressure FD RX8 regulator, and shimming the relief valve spring in the front cover. So pretty common practice for oil mods, just forgot to mention it earlier. One of the reasons why we push oil mods on these engines is the manufacturer recommends running a 520 oil, and for whatever reason, when we take apart engines that have a little bit of mileage on them, we see abnormally excessive bearing wear, and don't really know the true answer why, but oil thickness and you know, obviously conditions that the engine runs under in climates where people might drive their car when it's cold, like in Alberta. There are some people actually who do drive their RX8s all year round, and there's no doubt about it, it cannot be anything good for the bearings or the engine to start when it's minus 30 outside. So we're going to assume that the majority of the benefits of the oil mods in this case are going to be for performance related reasons, whether or not Mike is going to do a turbo kit in the future, or whether he's going to run this car on the road course, the track, or regular street driving even when it's not real cold outside, but probably won't see the kind of conditions like a car that's been driven year round in minus 20 and minus 30 temperatures. But nonetheless, it definitely helps to have some extra oil flow and some extra pressure, and again, noticeably a weak point in these engines for whatever the main contributing cause is. It's a good idea, and we actually stock brand new FD regulators by the half dozen at any one given time for the sake of engines we build and for mail order, because back in the day when we first started doing it, you know, we would say, hey, there's nothing wrong with a good used regulator, and but we're out of those now, so we have brand new ones now, and then of course we're going to shim that spring in the relief valve on the front cover as well. Anyway, moving on. Just going to get, in a minute here, I'm going to get Mike to give me a hand with the crankshaft. So it is possible that the camera is going to be blocked momentarily. But we'll try and get that done quickly. And back to where you guys can see. There we are. Alright, more assembly lube. I don't think it's necessary to zoom in on these ports, but again, just so we're clear, this is Misha's brand new center, and these are his ported ports. And just going to apply a little lubrication to the next rotor bearing and to the gear. And then we'll get Micah's back rotor set down. It's possible you'll be able to see his name here on the rotor. Again, that's not for the audience, that's for Micah. His video, his engine, his money. And some people like to know they're getting the parts that they paid for. And these days, I don't blame people. Being in this industry for almost 20 years now, and seeing some of the garbage that people end up getting for an engine, you know, it's pretty saddening and disappointing for a lot of customers who get promised the stuff that they don't get. And you know, it's unethical and it's just flatly not right. So we take a lot of pride in knowing that everything we promise a customer is what they're going to get. Okay. And rust rotor housing, just putting some sealer on the bottom legs on this one. By the way, the other thing I will say too is I don't know if it's common or not for some of the other shops out there that do mail order rotary engines to offer assembly videos. And maybe they do and maybe they don't. And if they don't, maybe there's a good reason for it. I'm not trying to get anyone paranoid, but let's just say this. At the very least, no matter who you're ordering an engine from, tell the shop you want pictures of all your parts and with your name on them. I know that doesn't prove everything, but it's in good practice to gain the customer's trust and to make the customer feel comfortable. You know, especially in a case like we sell a lot of engines to the United States. In fact, all over the world we do mail order engines, and whether it's local, Eastern Canada, Western Canada, USA, or intercontinental, there is no reason why any shop can't take the time to take some pictures of the customer's parts or subcomponents as they get worked on or as the engine progresses, and email them to them. We've been doing it for at least 12, 13 years, sending photographs and updates, and hey, this is where your engine stands right now, or this is what stage you're at. And last apex seal. Go. Just put a little Vaseline on top of that end piece, and we will close this up. Okay, so there's one thing too that you know, maybe these days with the lack of availability to used housings and so on, and you know, shops having to start buying brand new stuff to offer engine builds to their customers. I guess on that note, there's not such a big reason to prove that the parts belong to the customer or not, because at that stage, when you're getting brand new parts, it's pretty obvious from the outside of an engine that the housings, one of the main 5 pieces, or in the case of a 20B, main 7 pieces, that there is going to be no doubt about it that the parts are new, and you can always see stuff like port work through the intake and exhaust ports to prove the parts are ported. Anyway, on that note, there is Micah's name again on this top of this housing, and this is his new FD oil pressure regulator here. We've already threaded in, so I'm just going to put a little lubrication on the main bearing and put this back plate down, and then we'll go through our torque sequence and close it up. And should drop down there. Okay, so we're just going to feed our bolts in. For anyone who has done an RX8 engine build before, you will know there are 4 extra long ones. One here in the typical bottom left corner, and then 3 more extra long ones at 3, 4, and 5 o'clock, staring at from the pack. And that's just because the casting is slightly different. This section here is raised higher, so have to make sure those bolts go in the right spot. And we will start . 3 and 9. Let's get some preliminary torque. And this is not torque. This is, for the most part, just overcoming the O-rings. Just getting the O-rings compressed down just a little bit. Flywheel nut. For those of you who have watched our videos before, we typically always like to rotate our engines around before we torque, just to make sure we get all the end pieces to break free. And if you just go ahead and torque the engine down and don't put torque gradually, in other words, you can go through a regular torque sequence, 3 or 4 different steps, applying a little bit more and more foot-pounds as you go through each sequence. But if you just leave the engine in one spot and the end pieces don't break off, you'd be surprised to see how difficult it is to spin the motor, even right now, as I'm getting just some minor preliminary torque on these bolts the engine's stiffer and tighter to turn over. Okay, so now we can snug up everything else. And I don't think that this video was ever intended to be real exciting. Again, it's more for the customer, and we always ask that our customers are in agreement with us being able to post the video up on YouTube over and above sending them their SD card with the same footage for their own personal consumption. There's no doubt about it, Michael will be able to see this video first, as he's going to get the card with the engine. And you guys will be able to see it a little bit later on down the road. So if you're watching now, I'm going to take a wild stab and say we're well into August already. And customer potentially could even have his engine installed and up and running. In fact, I would say that's highly likely that his car and this engine is running by now, because I know for a fact his old motor has been removed, and he's patiently waiting for delivery of this unit. So thank you to Micah for being a great customer, and for participating in purchasing our video services and allowing us to present again some of the high quality work we do. And if this SD card runs out of memory before we get the final torque spec applied to these tension bolts, we apologize, but our goal was to get this shot in a higher quality, which only allowed for 30 minutes of shooting time. And if I'm not mistaken, we're on the last minute right about now. So we will, my hands are slippery with Vaseline. I can't even take the socket off. There we go. Still shooting? That was our last step. That was one additional foot-pound beyond our previous sequence.